Well, Adam Payne, this is going to be such a powerful interview. You are the inventor of a lot of things. I mean, you're inventor of the technology that's used at Ultra Botanica, and you're also the CEO of the company. Uh, Tell me a little bit about your passion in this direction, because this was not where you started. You started in the pharmaceutical industry, right?
Well, I started in a biotech incubator back in 2005 with a guy named Bill Hagstrom who had come uh, out of Boston Scientific and a couple of other companies that spun out of Boston Scientific. We had developed an incubator that was focused on looking at technologies that were untouched in Oklahoma. And you might not think of Oklahoma as an interesting place for biotechnology, but in the Bay Area, every single research lab is picked over by every single venture fund that's out there looking for any possibilities of something that could be brought forth from the bench into the clinic. And out here in Oklahoma, nothing was touched. And literally, Doc, we had five technologies that were astonishing breakthroughs that in each one of their fields could have been a blockbuster drug or laboratory diagnostic. And so when we started the incubator, it was called Alpha Biopartners back in 2005. We were immediately jettisoned into the fourth dimension of biotechnology with three companies that each of which have become status symbols in today's practicing medicine. One of which is something that Myriad Biosciences picked up. It was a multiplex cytokine assay that became the gold standard currently in measuring disease activity in rheumatoid arthritis. And the other is an antimicrobial peptide that is being brought forth in Allergan as a treatment for gram-negative infections. So all of these things started in 2005, but that led to really amazing discoveries that we were learning in natural products, which is where my passion is today.
And so, and it's just fascinating to me. I mean, here you are, and it just kind of shows your mindset, shows your background, and then you stepped into, being exposed to all of that and dealing with all of that. Then all of a sudden, you moved more into this natural realm, where you're now in. So what created that shift?
Well, so it happened when we were looking at uh, these laboratory diagnostic tests. We had been conducting clinical studies in India because it was one of the only places on earth where we could find rheumatoid arthritis patients that were completely treatment naive. And which is you can't find anywhere on earth, literally. Only in India could we find these people. And so we would go in, we would recruit them into clinical studies where we could find different people that were clinically naive for treatment, and we were able to then test them. In the process of doing that, one of the researchers there said that they had found an herbal extract that was being used in the clinic and that was reversing rheumatoid arthritis. And he was desperate for us to test this stuff. So we got a hold of it after months and months of him literally begging us to take a look at it. And what we found was something astonishing, Doc. We used a sepsis model to first take a look at this product, and it was stopping sepsis in its tracks. And as you know, once sepsis starts in a person, it's almost impossible to rein the immune system back in. But we were able to initiate sepsis in a mouse model, and 2 hours after the initiation of sepsis, we were able to stop it with a an herbal product. We first thought it was maybe some adulterated mixture of herbs and maybe steroids and something like that. But as it turns out, it wasn't. It was a unique mixture from Western um, medicine herbal extracts of an ancient tradition that is called electrohomeopathy, but it had nothing to do with homeopathics, and it had nothing to do with and it was completely novel. We were able to characterize this herbal mixture and bring it forward into the United States as a treatment for eczema and psoriasis. It turns out that this herbal mixture was affecting the cytokines that were involved in the initiation and the proliferation of both eczema and psoriasis in the skin. IL-23 and IL-17 was impacted directly by this herbal extract. And to make a really long story short, um, we gained this reputation for being the guys in botanical medicine here in Oklahoma. And one of a researcher from a Sjogren's lab, and these are the people that work in Sjogren's and lupus, came to us and said, "Look, Adam, you guys have been doing amazing things in herbal medicine. Would you mind looking at curcumin? I think I've developed something that is really meaningful in curcumin." And honestly, Dr. Karlfeldt, we I didn't want to I really didn't want to touch curcumin. Um, I had been at many scientific meetings and the gastroenterology meetings, rheumatology meetings, and I'd seen, as you probably had seen at that time back in 2010, poster after poster presentation talking about the wonders of curcumin. And I thought to myself that people had already figured out how to what was going on with curcumin, and we weren't going to be able to do anything new with the substance. But I was wrong. We were actually able to um, figure out how to transport curcumin across the gut barrier, and more importantly, how to transport it across the blood-brain barrier. These were insights that, if we hadn't been on the rheumatology track, if we hadn't been doing clinical studies in India, if we hadn't gotten a reputation in herbal medicine, we never would have been introduced to curcumin from this little-known researcher at the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation, a guy named B.G. Kurian. And we never would have developed this breakthrough technology that is now, I think, one of the fastest growing and most powerful curcumin technologies in the clinic.
Yeah, because one of the yeah, tell me some of the challenges with regular curcumin, because everybody talks about, yes, curcumin is great, but the challenges is obviously the absorption, the utilization, and how to get it to the target where you need it. So talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So curcumin is a polyphenol. It's a molecule that has actually two phenolic rings on the sides, and then there's a hydroxy group in the middle, and it's a long flexible chain. It's actually been it was discovered because epidemiologists, these are the statisticians that study population trends, noticed that certain populations on Earth had lower cancer rates, lower Alzheimer's rates, lower diabetes rates. And when they looked at all of the variables that were available to them, it wasn't genomics, it wasn't geography, it wasn't race. The only independent variable that remained was if the turmeric root was a daily part of their diet, then they had these lower cancer rates and Alzheimer's rates. And if they didn't, then it was the normal global population rates. This is why the folks in Okinawa live longer, because they use turmeric tea on a daily basis. This is why these population groups in India have these same lower cancer rates. It's because they use turmeric in their daily diet. And this spawned tons of research on turmeric back in the 70s, where they were able to isolate and discover curcumin. In its extracted form, curcumin is about 2 to 3% of the turmeric root plant. and it creates a crystalline extract. This crystalline extract is completely insoluble in the gut. Under basic conditions, it is soluble, but it's very fragile, so it doesn't last very long. And so all of the efforts to make it bioavailable to the human body have focused on micronizing the crystal, increasing exponentially the surface area, and hopefully creating enough surface area so some of it would dissolve, so it would release a molecule of the curcumin to allow it to interact with the cells in our body. But horrible efficacy. There were tons of research done on curcumin in cancer, tons of research done on curcumin in inflammatory diseases, and nothing, absolutely nothing moved the needle. And this is because curcumin doesn't absorb. So we had a very simple observation, and Dr. Kurian, who was working with curcumin, he had a very simple idea. His idea was, let's take the curcumin molecule and get it into a liquid matrix. Let's dissolve it. Let's drive it into solution and provide that liquid curcumin as the dosage form. And Doc, it worked. Liquid curcumin, we felt it. I remember to the horror of Dr. Kurian, we made some of this stuff and we sat around a table and we took shot glasses of it while he looked on in horror. He was like, Adam, you can't do that. We haven't done any of the toxicity studies yet. You shouldn't do that yet. And I'm like, BG, curcumin has been studied for decades. Nobody's ever found anything toxic about it. And in my laissez-faire entrepreneur mindset, I was like, we're going to try this stuff. And we did. And we felt it. I felt it. We got this, we call it the curcumin buzz. And we looked at each other like 5 minutes after we'd taken these shots of liquid curcumin, and we knew that each of us were feeling it, and we're like, wow, this is crazy. We're feeling it in our central nervous system. So not only was it absorbing through our gut, it was going into our brains. But that wasn't enough, because it wasn't stable. Nobody wanted to take home, you know, 30 big bottles of curcumin as their monthly supply. So we went back to the drawing board, Doc, and what I learned that was this is that curcumin had a higher coefficient of binding to proteins than it did to itself. And this is what we learned based upon playing with the curcumin and looking at different substrates. And the idea came to me, why don't we just use protein as a prodrug? And so what we did, we tried it. We attached solubilized curcumin to a protein. And what I thought was that maybe as the body's digesting that protein matrix, those molecules would be released. And lo and behold, it worked. People were reporting to us overnight results with curcumin that nobody had ever seen before. A dear friend of mine, an ex-Special Forces um, a guy, he had bilateral tennis elbow, and I gave him a bucket of the stuff, and he called me the next morning saying he was chipping golf balls off of his back porch, that he had pushed himself out of bed in the morning without thinking. He hadn't been able to do that in 6 months. He had curled dumbbells, and he was calling me saying, "Is it possible that this stuff worked this quickly? I can move my elbows. I can use my arms." Doc, we were astonished. And that was literally the birth of what we call UltraCur, which is our curcumin protein conjugate.
Yeah, and that's a product that's a staple in my practice, for I mean all my cancer patients and anyone anyone condition. So just a couple of questions. So just to kind of clarify. So here initially you had then the curcumin, and then you put it in a liquid solution and you drank that. So is it possible then people that buy just regular curcumin and just put it in water, is that the same thing, or?
You can get there. There's something called golden milk, which is actually a staple of India, where they heat up the turmeric root in milk, and they get this golden milk. They use it traditionally in their lay cultures for as a natural fever reducer, as a natural pain reducer. And guess what's happening? The curcumin molecules are being liberated from the turmeric plant. It's binding to the proteins in the milk, and it's ultra in its native form in its traditional sense. Um, but you're not going to get the high dosages that you get with UltraCur. In order to get multiple milligram quantities into the body, you really need to take a concentrated form. You'd have to use about 4 or 5 tablespoons of raw turmeric in order to get the same benefit that you would have with UltraCur. But it's a start. It's definitely a start for people that don't that are looking for a quick fix.
And because I just want to kind of go through, another one is that you combine curcumin with black pepper.
Right. Yeah.
So can you explain a little bit how efficient is that in as a delivery mechanism?
So a lot of people, you're right. Many people believe that black pepper is necessary in order to improve the absorption of curcumin, and in fact, it's a misnomer. Black pepper has very little impact on absorption of curcumin in the body. What black pepper is doing is it is inhibiting a liver enzyme called glucuronidase. And this is artificially increasing the little bits of curcumin that are absorbed with other forms of curcumin by inhibiting first pass metabolism. Glucuronidase glucuronidates the curcumin, and that's the first kind of metabolic pathway that breaks up the curcuminoids and turns it into tetrahydrocurcuminoids. And then it has many other degradation pathways after that. We don't really need to use black pepper to improve our absorption. We provide such a high bolus or a large amount of curcuminoids that naturally absorb through the gut by using this protein transport technology.
So it's called a LPS, right? Liquid protein scaffolding. So
Correct.
you're kind of adding these proteins, and when you do that, use that technology, it kind of hits. I mean, it goes in the bloodstream like within 20 minutes or so, right?
That's exactly right. The whey protein scaffolding is completely absorbed within 20 minutes. In our non-cancer scaffolds, we use N-acetylcysteine because we can get a lot more of the bioactive plant compounds on that scaffold. And we also use brown rice protein, an organic brown rice protein, as a scaffold when we want a little bit of a longer absorption profile. And we're not too concerned about the speed of the absorption. But all told, we have many different scaffolds, and more importantly, we've learned that this technology works on many plant bioactive compounds that heretofore haven't been really stellar actors in the cancer realm or in the inflammation realm or in the metabolic realm. One of these is berberine. As you know, has the promise of being a very important molecule both in cancer and in insulin resistance for its ability or its supposed ability to influence the AMPK pathway inside of a cell. And berberine just doesn't absorb normally. In its extracted form, it has the same solubility that curcumin has. It's micrograms per ml will absorb in the body. But our formula, by attaching it to whey protein or brown rice protein, it absorbs almost immediately. And we see resolutions of insulin resistance in people that have metabolic syndrome within 2 hours.
That's incredible. So a person, when you talk, you say whey protein, or it's not like you can, take the pill of normal berberine and drink it, swallow it with a whey, protein powder.
No,
It
no.
would not have the same effect because this is a kind of a technology where you physically attach them in order to be able to increase the absorption.
That's right. We do protein chemistry here at our facility. We have 25,000 square feet of pharmaceutical grade manufacturing here behind me, and where we physically conjugate these plant bioactive compounds to the scaffolding, and then we dry them down and turn them into a free-flowing powder that's used in capsules, in drink mixes, and in all sorts of different forms.
And so in cancer, I mean, you have kind of the traditional oncology route. You know, you got the chemo, radiation, surgery, immunotherapy, you know, hormone, you know, deprivation or hormone. Uh, so what are some of the challenges that exist within that field, and how does uh, these products kind of add to what's going on in that field?
So this is where things got really interesting for us about 4 years ago. Um, what I learned was that there are many cellular pathways that are out of balance in cancer. We call them metabolic pathways. And these pathways have to do with the activation, the overactivation of cellular replication or division. These are pathways that have to do with energy allocation inside the cell. These are pathways that have to do with inflammation, the reaction of cancer cells to an inflammation signal, etc. And we've mapped these out. Well, what it turns out, Doc, is um, that some of these cellular pathways that are out of balance in cancer cells, just like what we learned with inflammation and curcumin, how it affects NF-kappa beta, which is that primary signaling pathway inside of a cell that has to do with inflammation. And as well as curcumin addresses inflammation, there are other cellular pathways that are dysregulated in cancer that have unique botanical extracts that can address those dysfunctions. One of those, for example, is AMPK, which can be highly dysregulated in cancer cells as it's dealing with glucose metabolism and its energy balance. Berberine, which we've already talked about, significantly impacts AMPK much better than some pharmaceuticals and much better than any other intervention that we know of. In fact, berberine is almost a perfect lock and key to the AMPK pathway, and it can disrupt significantly glucose metabolism, which is one of the primary energy sources for a cancer cell.
And so all these different pathways, you know, how so the chemo kind of helped me understand. So the chemo, radiation, all of that, none of these really impact these pathways. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, they can. So chemo can affect directly a whole slew of different pathways by weakening a cancer cell directly through its metal toxicities and all the different toxicities that can be present in a cancer cell. Immune drugs are these immune modulating drugs that specifically target one or two different aberrant pathways in a cell are being used quite prolifically right now in cancer. But I'll give you an example. So, for example, there is a pathway we call the P13 AKT mTOR MAP ERK pathway. This is a pathway that regulates cellular energy and cellular division. And in many cancers, it is completely out of control, which contributes to the uncontrolled division and growth of cancer cells when this P13 mTOR MAP ERK pathway is completely activated. Curcumin and quercetin and a number of other compounds that are in some of the products that we make, which we call pathway products, can uniquely interfere with that pathway by interfering with the mTOR portion of cell signaling inside of the cell.
So it's kind of like you have and like you mentioned, the chemo with the toxic heavy metals, can kind of interfere with a lot of these things, but obviously these are toxic metals and it comes with a cost. And
Yes.
so when you then pull away, then you're then dealing with dysfunctional cellular mechanisms, even in healthy cells, because it interferes, with the healthy function within those cells. So where do these kind of natural agents fit into that picture? How do they add value to what the chemo drugs do? Can they do similar things in a way for people that are do not choose to do chemo or post chemo, or maybe they just want to, they're concerned and they want to support these mechanisms anyway?
So as you know, Doc, we provide a meta-analytical framework that we've put together that maps out 21 different metabolic pathways in cancer cells that can be dysregulated. And we map them out on a scale of 1 to 10. So to provide a framework for you as a clinician to help you dial in where these different cancers might have their highest metabolic dysfunction. And with that information, you have you have pharmaceutical interventions that are off-label that you can use. You have natural interventions that you can use, hyperbaric or oxygen, vitamin C, etc. The mistletoe injections, all of the different the plethora of interventions that you can use. And then we've mapped into those same metabolic pathways how the different bioactive plant compounds, these polyphenols and isoquinoline ingredients, can synergistically and significantly impact those same pathways, giving giving us as the clinical world a toolkit that we can use to differentially weaken cancer cells where they are most fragile, which is these dysregulated metabolic pathways.
And I assume, from my understanding, is that these natural agents, the beauty with them is that they have such a complex structure, chemical structure, that makes them very useful and makes it very hard for cancer cells to really adapt and adjust, because it is such a kind of very complex, addressing of these different pathways.
It's true. I don't know why God made this biology this way, but the most powerful agents that can affect these different metabolic pathways are plant extracts like curcumin. I'll give you another example, NRF2, NRF2, which is one of a phase two detoxification pathway. Curcumin is one of the most powerful NRF2 regulators. Um, and when we want to affect that dysregulated pathway, we can bring in these bioactive plant compounds like EGCG, resveratrol, curcumin, berberin that can differentially affect these dysregulated cellular pathways that are out of control in cancer, in many different cancers.
And so you created your company. I mean, you distinctly created, four pathways, four products, one for, you call pathway one, two, three, four. You know, why, and each one has a very specific uh y- set of herbs, within them. So what are the differences between one, two, three, four? I mean, why
Sure.
putting, some in number one, some in number two, and so forth?
So, pathway one is based upon research that we've done on hemp extracts and frankincense extracts as frankincense essential oils. Um, this is pathway one is the one product that deals with um, the connection of cancer to fungus and immune cell dysregulation. Frankincense has been used since ancient times as a very powerful antifungal agent, as a whole number of different things that it can do internally in the body with the digestion, etc. One of the grandfathers of frankincense research is a guy named H.K. Lin, who is a part of the oncology urology group here in Oklahoma City, a tenured professor who published over 100 research papers about frankincense. We were able to bring his research here into our into Pathway One product and modify both the species and the extraction method that's being used for the frankincense essential oil, um, and to modify its absorption so that it could have the most benefit for people that are dealing with cancer. It seems to inhibit the um, the fungal component of cancer cells, and which is really interesting. We didn't know that there was such a strong connection between fungal ecologies and cancers until the recent Israeli paper was published in Cell, which has shown that there are fungal ecologies with every single solid tumor that they were able to find. And this was a search of over 17,000 different solid tumors across the globe. The name of the paper is Fungal and Bacterial Ecologies in Cancer Cells. And it's truly a landmark paper. And we believe that the components of Pathway One are uniquely suited to address some of that dysbiosis. Pathway Two is a combination of curcumin and quercetin, which we formulated uniquely for its ability to synergistically affect different pathways that curcumin and quercetin can differentially affect. NF-kappa beta, NRF2, COX2, LOX5 are all cellular pathways that are synergistically addressed with curcumin and quercetin. And one of my favorite pathways that is responsible for the immortalization of cancer cells, a pathway called P53, which many cancer cells protect and don't express, curcumin and quercetin synergistically can activate.
But
Um,
let me ask a little bit more about Pathway One. I just want to backtrack a little bit. So,
sure.
because a lot of people out there, they use frankincense essential oils, and so how, or they would take a boswellia, supplement, boswellia frankincense, interchangeable. Uh, how does this, what you have, how is that different than what you would find out there?
It's extremely different. Where do I begin? First of all, we start by depleting the monoterpenes out of frankincense, the essential oil, because the monoterpenes have no therapeutic or health benefit to people. In fact, the monoterpenes can cause extreme nausea and irritation in the body. And so we first off, without our starting place is to deplete the monoterpenes out of the frankincense. Secondly, we're using a cultivar of frankincense that is very little known, but which we have studied at the labs in the University of Oklahoma, has the most potency in its ability to differentially affect cancer cells, and thus allowing us to achieve a healthy status with a much more powerful cultivar of frankincense. So we're using a very little known cultivar of frankincense, and we are providing a dosage form that is providing the least amount of irritation and won't cause nausea or any other kind of unwanted health effects.
And also you mentioned like the cannabinoids, and we all, there are a lot of people out there taking CBD and CBG and and so is that essentially kind of the what you do there as well? Is that equal to what's out there?
No, it's not. In fact, our research has shown that it is not it is just people are doing just the opposite of what they need to do with cannabinoids, is what we have in our Pathway One formula. Our research has shown, Doc, that it is the acidic forms of the cannabinoids that have their most benefit in people that are dealing with cancer. And so we have a magic ratio that we use of the acidic to the non-acidic cannabinoids. And people can understand what the acidic cannabinoids are. It's the CBDA, it's the CBGA, it's the micro amounts of THCA that we allow that are within the federal limits. This is not a marijuana product. It is a hemp product which has below 0.3% THC in it. And again, we are preferentially keeping the cannabinoid profile in its native acidic forms, not decarboxylating the cannabinoids and essentially uh, making it inactive in people that are dealing with cancer. It is the acidic forms that actually have the most benefit. And then we're using cultivars of hemp that we have shown have the most high bioactivity in cancer. We use specific genetics or cultivars that provide a terpene profile that we extract using cryogenic conditions that maintains not only the acidic cannabinoids, but also a very specific terpene profile that we have found has the most benefit for people.
There's a lot of people out there that use like RSO, like Rick Simpson's oil. So this is, and I know there's a huge amount of different qualities out there. So just because it says RSO doesn't mean that
Doesn't
they're
mean it
all the
has
same.
anything. Yeah, it has nothing to do with what. And this is the research question that got me 5 years ago. We had a medical marijuana activist on our board that was pushing us to try to do some research in marijuana and cancer. And when I was looking at it, as I'm sure as you looked at it, Doc, there's such variability in the results people get with RSO. And I think the real reason why they're getting such variable results is that most people heat the RSO up in order to decarboxylate the cannabinoids, thinking because they think that they need to activate the cannabinoids because that's what they do with THC. In order to activate THC and make it psychoactive, you heat it up and you take the acidic form. You turn it from THCA to THC. But it's just the opposite for cannabinoids. It's the deacidified, the decarboxylated forms have almost no benefit in cancer. It is the acidic forms that actually are the beneficiaries.
And that is what you have then with the a very unique, powerful form of frankincense or boswellia, in the oncojunct one, and so then we talked a lot about the oncojunct, the pathway 3,
Right.
which is the berberine, with the increased delivery, and you talked about the AMPK, but one thing that a lot of people also are concerned about is that cancer cells are very sugar hungry. I mean they fuel on cancer because of that fermentation process,
That's
and
right.
so talk a little bit about that and berberine.
Well, that's berberine actually modulates the sugar metabolism and inhibits um, glycolysis metabolism. It tries to shunt it towards aerobic respiration, towards the Krebs cycle, which of course cancer cells, which have highly damaged mitochondria, it doesn't work there. So berberine uh, can harm a cancer cell by by inhibiting glycolysis, that inefficient use of glucose that most cancer cells are relying on for its energy. And we're coming out with a new product, which will be Pathway 3 Plus. We're combining the berberine with American Biosciences metrolol fermented wheat germ extract concentrate. And we've done a lot of research, as I'm sure you have, Doc, on what that fermented wheat germ extract, its mechanism of activity, its primary mode of how it inhibits cancer cells is through inhibiting this glycolysis or this sugar fermentation pathway. So we'll have the 1-2 punch with pathway 3 plus the berberine, the highly absorbed LPL berberine, plus the fermented wheat germ extract. as Pathway 3 Plus coming out in a couple of weeks.
That's really exciting. Yeah, because it's the name of the game. What we're finding is that if you can control a lot of these pathways that's supporting cancer activity, and then at the same time drive energy production through the mitochondria and interfere with the process, the kind of fermentation process that normal cancer cell are utilizing, because in the mitochondria, that's where kind of the cell death switch exists. That's where
That's right.
genetic repair exists. So anytime we can kind of drive it through the mitochondria, we're going to benefit.
Exactly. And we're playing with some really unique compounds that are coming out in Pathway 5, like urolithin A will be is uniquely works with our protein scaffolding technology. This is a very powerful mitophagy inducing compound, which I'm sure you've heard about. And we're looking at other compounds like abscisic acid, which also shut down fermentation energy production and cause or move the body towards mitochondrial repair. So there's some really exciting things that are out there. Pathway 4 is a unique set of polyphenol ingredients that uniquely affect the hypoxic pathways in the cell. HIF is highly activated in cancer cells because they're living in an oxygen hypoxic environment. And EGCG, resveratrol, and a little known polyphenol called fisetin all synergistically address these hypoxic pathways and can regulate a cell and weaken a cell that is dysregulated in that way.
Yeah, and what's interesting, kind of looking at that blend, in addition to the benefit working on these pathways. I mean, it's like an anti-aging blend as well. I mean,
That's true.
I know you have a senolytic blend already, but yeah, just for people that are wanting to kind of do preventative measures, the pathway 4 is both anti-aging, and talking about senescent cells and clearing out senescent cells. It's a powerful tool just in that alone.
I agree. And it also includes Immudine's beta glucans concentrate, which is a highly purified and highly bioactive beta 1316 beta glucans material. We're really excited about all that whole combination. Um, has a regenerative effect on senescent immune cells and also has a very powerful botanical signal on many, many different cellular pathways that are dysregulated in cancer.
Yeah, it's exciting. So for an individual then kind of concerned in regards to cancer, uh, how should they just take all four? I mean, is would that I don't see any harm in taking all four. I mean, that seems to be kind of a good punch.
Yeah, there's all of these products are available online. They don't require a prescription, and they can be used uh, in to help on a to maintain health for people that are worried about different health conditions. We would highly recommend that anybody that's dealing with cancer or wants to um, uh, prevent cancer in their bodies to work with an integrative physician or a naturopath that has a background in cancer, like with the FABNO certification, or a good clinical nutritionist that has a background in cancer and wellness. Some of these compounds really need to be dialed in specifically to the type of cancer that people have and not just taken in a vacuum.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And you're, like you mentioned, and which you have access to, those, mapping out for each cancer, which pathways, you've already done that groundwork, and then also then showing, natural agents, that exist within the pathway 1 through 4, that can then benefit, in each one of these pathways that are dysregulated in the specific cancers.
Yeah, it can be a very powerful tool that we give to physicians and clinicians that have a medical license to help make a decision that we provide in our formulas the basic dosing. And a clinician could choose to do multiples of any of these products up to 2 to 3 times higher dosing when it's appropriate to the health condition that the patient has.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. Well, anything else that you feel is important that we've missed in regards to, because this is such a powerful tool for people. I want to make sure um that they fully understand, how this can benefit them.
Well, we strongly recommend working with a clinician. If anybody's dealing with cancer, first find yourself the right health team. That is the first step. And then your health coach, your clinician will help guide you in making the right decisions about which products, whether they're nutraceutical or pharmaceutical, can help provide the best benefit. The book Tripping Over the Truth by Travis Christofferson changed my world about 3 years ago when I was introduced to his work and introduced to all the work that Siegfried and Otto Warburg did. Up to that point, I was still I thought that cancer was a genetic disease. So if anybody is still confused about the nature of cancer, starting with Travis's book, Travis Christofferson's Tripping Over the Truth, is a great introduction into what I think is cutting edge research and a paradigm about how to think about cancer, and how to deal with cancer once if we want to eradicate it. I don't know what your experience is with his work, Doc, but that work literally transformed my thinking and my world.
Yeah, no, it's such powerful work, powerful information, and what I love to kind of add is that our mentality is, we have kind of like this war on cancer where we go and attack and we kill, and we just want to destroy, and we don't understand that it's impossible to kill and destroy everything. So then we need to then create and support regulatory mechanisms, within the individual, and that is when we can then bring in, these kind of natural agent to support these regulatory mechanisms. Because if we don't have them there, after we've done all the kill, whatever is remaining is then going to just do its own thing, because there are no borders, there are no checkpoints, there's no immune system, there's no, all of that is not there, because we've kind of destroyed the field. And that's why bringing, doing more of that integrative approach where you marry the systems, becomes such an important aspect in your care plan.
I couldn't. That was beautifully said. There's the dysregulation at the cellular level. Then there's also the dysregulation in the microbiome, and which has this huge impact on cell cycle regulation and how our microbiome interacts with our own biology. It all comes together into a holistic approach that people can take hold of, that we've seen make a huge difference in patient outcomes.
Yeah, love it. Well, Adam, thank you so much for the powerful work you're doing, for the science you're bringing forth, that we can all benefit from, and for making the work for someone like myself so much easier, as I work with patients. So thank you so much.
Yeah, glad to help and glad to connect with any clinicians that are interested in learning more about our work.